What is up YouTube, Scarido here, and welcome to 3 disturbing Home Alone stories by Daily Dose of Creeps. So I'll leave a link to their channel in the description below, and I was actually recommended to watch this by my newest subscriber Mike Murdoch, so a massive shout out to him. So let's take a look. For best experience, use headphones. Well, I got that one covered. Daily Dose of Creeps. Oh, there wasn't any sound. There we go. Three disturbing Home Alone stories.
This is Daily Dose of Creeps. Welcome to episode 1. 3 disturbing Home Alone stories.
Love his voice.
Story 1. The Mad Animus.
Okay.
I was 12 years old when it happened. Even though I'm nearing my 30s now, I remember the day like it was yesterday. Believe me, it's not something you would forget about in a hurry. I was home alone. My parents had gone out to a friend's place for dinner that night, telling me they would be back late. They were going to arrange for a babysitter, but like most 12-year-olds, I convinced them I was old enough to look after myself for a few hours, something I'd quickly come to regret. They reluctantly agreed, and I excitedly ushered them out the door, eager to have the whole house to myself for a few hours. I spent the first hour or so playing Soul Calibur on my GameCube and devouring all the junk food I could find from both the cupboards and the fridge.
Good game.
It was already starting to get dark at this point, the sky turning a deep shade of purple. It must have been around 8 o'clock at night.
Bit ominous for the sky to be turning
It
purple.
being South Florida, it started to rain pretty heavily at this point, per usual. My parents told me not to expect them back until about 10, so I still had about 2 hours to myself. By the time it reached 9 o'clock, I was starting to doze off. I turned off the TV and headed to my room. I must have fallen asleep at some point because next thing I knew, I was suddenly jolted awake.
Ooh.
My parents must have been home, or so I thought at the time. Then I noticed the clock by my bed said it was only 9:30. The house was quiet. My parents are usually very loud coming to the house, so I quickly realized they couldn't be home. Something had woken me up, though. I was disorientated at first and thought I was seeing things. But as the sleep cleared from my head, I realized what I was seeing was real.
Oh.
There was a face at the window.
That is creepy.
I was completely frozen as we both just stared at each other. The face was smiling. The smile slowly became a grimace. That's when I began to scream. But it was drowned out by the sound of glass breaking as the window exploded inwards.
Wow.
I jumped out of bed, tripping over the bed covers and stumbling to get away from the window as the woman burst through. She must have been about 70 years old, and she was stark naked. It's an image I'll never forget, no matter how much I tried to.
Okay, fair enough.
As soon as she was on her feet, her eyes blazing with certain madness, she reached out to grab me. Her fingernails were sharp and yellow, and I almost felt them ghost the back of my neck as I turned and fled the room, slamming the door shut behind me. She was delayed for a moment as she tried to get the door open, and by that point I was already in the bathroom, the only room in the house with a lock on it.
Why is the
I
bathroom
was
the
out
only
of
room
breath,
with a lock
and I
on?
remember clearly the sweat gathering on my neck as I sat there, trying to comprehend what was happening. At first, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. That thought quickly disappeared when she began slamming against the door. I scrambled back as far away from the door as I could and fell into the bathtub. In a panic, I turned the faucet on for some reason. I don't know why, but my clothes were completely soaked. She was hitting that door so hard, I was worried it might start to crack open from the sheer force. The old woman definitely has some unnatural strength to her.
Okay.
After a while, she gave up. I heard her move away from the door and start shuffling through the rest of the house, muttering to herself. She kept saying stop or leave me alone or something like that over and over again. I don't know how long I stayed in that bathroom. At the time, I knew nothing of religion, but I was praying for my parents to come home.
I wouldn't be surprised.
After some time, I decided to brave going out. I hadn't heard the woman for some time. Thought she might have left. I tiptoed across the hallway to the kitchen and peered
there's
around.
going to be jump scares,
There was
I know
nothing.
it.
I could barely breathe, and my heart felt like it would burst from my chest. I could feel her staring at me, so I turned around and there she was. Stood in the darkness of the hallway, grinning at me with a mouth missing half her teeth.
Ooh.
I screamed again and bolted for the front door. My fingers barely touched the handle when I remembered my parents had locked it before they left, and I had no clue where the keys were. The woman was right behind me. Her claw-like fingers grabbed the back of my shirt, but because my clothes were soaked from the bathtub, I was able to slip out of her grip, flee back to the kitchen, and right there, the keys were on the island table. I grabbed those suckers quick. Then I doubled back around to the living room, managed to throw the door open with the woman breathing down my back. I ran out into the night, not sure where I was going, but I was desperate to get away from that crazy old woman. She was still behind me, but I think she was starting to get tired because I was way ahead of her. When I couldn't see her anymore, I almost collapsed from exhaustion. I cautiously walked back home, tired and drenched. I reached the house just as my parents pulled into the driveway. My mom had a WTF expression on her face when she saw me, but it quickly turned into concern when I started to cry. I told them what had happened and my dad called 911 immediately. The rest of the night felt like a blur. So was the rest of the school year, honestly. I'm pretty sure they eventually found her that night, and I assume she was sent to some institution where she belonged.
I would probably say so.
To this day, I start to feel a boulder-sized lump in my chest when I'm alone at night.
I mean, that is a horrifying thing to go through.
Story 2. The Watcher.
Okay.
I'm a single woman living in a heavily wooded area of Tennessee, and I prefer to live by myself. I was home alone as usual, watching some cute TV movie, when I got an uneasy feeling of being watched. It's not something that's easy to describe, but I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck lifting like static. My heart rate was faster than usual, a thick beat beneath my skin. I tried to shake off the paranoia and carry on watching television, but the feeling began to grow stronger until I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Feeling anxious about the whole thing, I eventually got up.
I mean, you're pretty
I
much
tried to tell myself I was just being silly.
You're pretty much
But it was
someone who's
difficult
in
to
a cabin
ignore
in the
when it was
woods,
so
so
strong. I'd been living alone for about 2 years and I was pretty used to it, but I'd never had such an overwhelming feeling of disconcernment before. It disturbed me. I ended up having a quick look around the house, checking that all the doors were locked and that I was definitely alone.
always a good thing to do.
Then I checked the windows just as an additional precaution, and that's when I saw it. I say it mostly because the gender was indeterminable. All I saw were the eyes peering at me from the darkness outside the window. It caught me off guard and I did nothing but stare, not entirely sure what to do. Those eyes continued watching me, colorless and unblinking in the dark. My fingers trembled a bit as I reached over to draw the curtains, shutting the eyes from my sight. I was tempted to call the police, but I could barely think rationally, let alone move. Hopefully, whoever the watcher was, they would just leave. I knew that all the doors were locked, but I still felt in danger. Who in their right mind would be all the way out here at this time?
Someone who
I
probably
went
wants
around
to
and
kill
checked
you.
the other windows, closing the curtains so that nobody else could peek inside. They were all empty, until I reached the kitchen.
Oh, that's always not a good sign.
I was just about to lower the blinds on the window behind the sink, when two eyes suddenly appeared, flashing in the dark. It startled me. This time I screamed, stumbling back reflexively. The eyes watched me with the same uncanny intensity. I thought I saw the curl of her mouth too, floating somewhere in the darkness.
Oh, okay.
I swallowed down my panic and banged a fist against the window, trying to spook them. "Go! Get the hell out of here!" I yelled. but the eyes barely gave so much as a flutter. I tugged at the strings and the blinds rattled down, and still shaken, I went back to the front room. There was a chill in the house now. For a moment I was worried that I had left a window open somewhere, letting in some cool winter air, but I realized it was just me, my own fear.
I have to admit, the sound effects for this are amazing.
When I had finally calmed down and found my resolve, I grabbed my flashlight and Ruger pistol from the drawer and went outside.
Well, that's a good
It was a chilly night, and
thing
the
to do.
darkness played havoc with my vision, the beam of my flashlight tracking shadows all across the lawn. I went all around the house, flashing the light over each window, but I never found the stranger who had been watching me. Even now, I still remember their eyes peering through the glass, eerily intense. I obviously didn't sleep that night.
I'm not surprised.
Whatever it was, still remains a mystery.
Okay, that's, again, another creepy story.
Story 3. Voices in the Walls.
Oh, now this is going to be a creepy
It
one.
happened during my first week at my new university. I had just moved into a decent apartment with an eye shot of the school, in preparation for the first day of the first semester, and I was feeling the nervous anticipation of living on my own for the first time. Sleep eluded me that first night. I was kept up both by my anxiety and excitement. It must have been nearing 2 in the morning when I heard voices. Not gonna lie, it was quite unsettling at first. I thought they were coming from inside the room.
Yeah, sometimes
As
that
if
happens
someone was
with
inside
rooms.
my apartment.
Oh,
But I
that's the
quickly
apartment.
realized the voices were coming through the walls.
Ooh.
Since I was
Not
already
good.
feeling anxious, the whole thing creeped me out. I couldn't hear what they were saying, muffled through the walls, but they kept me up for the rest of the night. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't.
It normally never
The next
is.
few nights were the same. I would usually wake up around the same time after midnight and hear them. I figured it was just my neighbors speaking, but the voices gradually grew louder. They began to pervade my sleep, creep into my dreams, and drag me right back into wakefulness. Then one night, things got way worse. I woke up one night to raised voices. The tension was palpable through the walls, and I could feel goosebumps raising along my skin as I listened to them. I hadn't heard them fight like this before, and it seriously scared me.
Okay.
I had to lay there listening to the voices trembling with anger, sharp and vicious through the cracks in the walls. Then I heard a thud, right against the wall, on the other side of the room. I swear my heart stopped. Everything went quiet after that. The silence felt loud. On one hand, I was grateful for the peace, but I couldn't get that thud out of my head. What had happened? Were they okay? After what seemed like an eternity, I finally gave into my exhaustion and passed out.
Okay, this is where it gets bad.
I woke up screaming when someone rapidly knocked on the door. Fists were slamming desperately against the wood. I could feel the vibrations in my head. I was terrified. I was alone and it was in the middle of the night, and I didn't want to answer the door. But they kept knocking, and with such urgency. I felt compelled to get up. My door didn't have a peephole or anything, so I opened it up slowly,
Oh dear.
keeping a foot wedged against the back of it in case I had to shut it quickly. To my surprise, it was a young woman. Her face was barely visible. It was obstructed by what seemed to be blood-soaked hair.
Oh, that's not
From what I
good.
could see, one of her eyes was red from crying. There was a bruise flowering across her cheek. I realized it was my neighbor. She struggled to get words out when I asked her what happened. She sounded almost like how a deaf person speaks. She told me in hushed panic whispers that she'd had a fight with her boyfriend, and that he had tried to kill her.
Ooh, that's
I
not
noticed
good.
that her jaw was completely broken. So before she finished talking, I had the door open and was ushering her inside, locking it after her. I turned around towards her, and what I saw next absolutely horrified me.
Ooh.
Her hair barely moved out of the way when I noticed that not only was her eyeball hanging out, but her boyfriend had ripped her mouth open into a Glasgow smile.
Jeez.
I immediately understood why she was talking like that. I told her to stay where she was while I phoned 911. As I was speaking to them, I could hear someone thrashing around next door, things breaking and shattering. My neighbor, who I later learned was named Emily, looked terrified. I was scared too, mainly that the boyfriend would come looking for her. We ended up hiding in my room until the cops and medics arrived. He tried to run away, but they released a canine unit after him, which was quite satisfying, to be honest. I'm sure you can understand the anger I was feeling after seeing what he'd done to her. After speaking with the detective about the experience, I later learned that her boyfriend was honorably discharged from the Marines after 2 terms in Afghanistan.
Fair enough.
He had suffered from PTSD. A week later, I saw Emily's father helping her move out. She had a patch over her eye, stitches across her face, and she looked absolutely miserable. It was a horrible experience to say the least, and it made my first week at college memorable for all the wrong reasons.
Damn, okay.
I just really want to thank all of you who made it to the end of the video. This is my first video on YouTube, and it's a very new experience for me.
Subscribe
but it was actually
to him.
pretty fun to make.
Everyone subscribe to him because they are really good stories.
So, if you're into creeps as much as I am, consider subscribing. And hit the like button so that other people could see this.
I most definitely will.
Make me a happy
it was really
man.
good.
Alright. I'm out of here. Let me know what you all thought in the comments. Oh yeah, before I forget, special shout out to the homies from the spaceship. Y'all know who you are. Peace out.
Okay, don't know what that was about. But yeah, that was really, really good. I have to say, I am impressed. So that was 3 disturbing Home Alone stories by Daily Dose of Creeps. Subscribe to him. I mean, I'm going to subscribe and like the video myself now. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Okay, so that's the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, remember to hit the subscribe button, give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one.